So we are back with Culture War Battles, where the Culture War in question is, do you consider the Festivals of Battles event worth rating units? And if so, why? As the Truth DT and some other members of the community, I know Mass Ningen and Celtic have personally said they disapprove of the event. A lot of people disapprove of the event, but there's a big storm of positivity for the event, particularly from the biggest content creators. And I kind of wanted to address the reason why, if you are someone who's new or free to play, why you're seeing such glowing praise from people like Truth and people like Minato, whereas a lot of the community who are not content creators, maybe who don't make a lot of money from just putting up 3-hour videos of them playing the game, why this is less ideal. Because right now it's sort of getting lost on people, and the thing that is being said instead is that we're going to rate units on this because people need to beat it, quote unquote. And I guess we'll just talk about that part too. Beat it. Do they though? Because in most games, or in most stages, you actually do need to beat the stage. Whereas in this one, you only need to beat up to 25. Remember, 20 and 25. Let's see. That's somewhere in this area here, something like this. And none of these bosses are difficult. You can blow through this in a single sitting. Maybe it's like here or something. And you would never have felt any pressure at all. And that's one of the bigger problems. So let's just get to the actual meat of this. So are y'all ready for the conversation? The reason the 10th anniversary infusions are capped at 4 turns fused is because of the Festival of Battles event. But y'all want to wait on that conversation? This is great bait because I would say that Truth knows when units are good, but I don't think he often knows what makes a good design. He just knows when things are strong. He flatly knows when things are strong, right? So why are the fusions actually capped at 4 turns? Okay, we're going here. And the reason is, the reason is because if you do not cap this character at 4 turns, then he becomes a genuinely invincible, unbalanceable issue for the game in every single event. Because you essentially could float him, bring him out here, and then no event could touch him. What does that mean then? That means that, one, you need to make this part of his kit super weak, the Goku part. You need to make this part of his kit super weak, the Vegeta part. And you need to completely hamstring this character because he would kill the game with no contest. There would be no event actually strong enough, because after you pop this and kill one of the middling stages, you then spend the next however many turns being 60% damage reduction, guarding all attacks, countering every single attack thrown at you, and doing about 40 million per turn, if not more. And oops, that is clearly a problem, right? How do you balance this character always being present if you also need to make it so that these characters can actually play the game? He's not capped at 4 turns because of the Festival of Battles event, I promise you. They're capped at 4 turns because there would not be a Dokkan Battle game for the foreseeable year if these characters were allowed to fuse on turn 4 and stay this way. You cannot have them have these words on them with their fusing condition being as easy as simply going to turn 4 without turn 5, without creating a dire problem for the game. It's not because of the Festival of Battles, it's because if you make this decision, you essentially change the fabric of Dokkan completely. You get into some of the worst power scaling power creep that any gacha has ever really seen, because you would invalidate every character, every Easy A of the last, I'm going to say 3 to 4 years. Because it's not even that okay, well, at least dodge characters would be good. They couldn't really band-aid this with dodge either, because one of the characters' main defensive mechanics is dodge. So we'd just come to a point where like nothing but them could really survive post the second or third phase of any boss, because they'd have to account for this character constantly being out and constantly applying way too much pressure to the game, which would completely flatten this game. This game would be a nightmare. And even if you say that, like, even if you want to give it to like Festival of Battles, you want to say, oh my god, it's because of Festival of Battles, like, it's just ignoring so much of what this stage is, which is that none of these phases threaten you. We're gonna keep going. None of these phases threaten you. Nope. Can't die here. Right around here is where you can really die. So you're essentially telling me, and by this point, like, every one of your stackers is sitting at about 8 to 9 million, 4 to 5, 6 million defense. And you're mostly just waiting until around here-ish to fuse. And that's enough. You know, this is typically enough to get through these phases, you know. Because you have 2 Vegetos, 1 Gogeta. You pop a Vegeto here, you kill this phase. You pop a Gogeta here, you kill this phase. You pop a Vegeto here, and then it's back-to-back Vegetos, right? So we're in a position where the formula is there, right? I could see this literally just being a mathematically solved stage. The reason is because this is essentially, people are looking at this as like, oh, you know, I'm moving my stacks here, I'm switching off characters here, I'm moving my stacks here. This is a very numbers stage. Once you get to around here, if someone is like, I'm not gonna say the word I was thinking of. If someone is dedicated enough, I think you could probably solve this stage mathematically with the team that we have, which is Namek Goku, Vegetos, Gogeta, the fusions, or the 4s and the gods, and who's the last one I'm always forgetting? Either way. And so we're at this point where, like, but like, okay, again, let's take for instance that this is the most important stage in the game, right? Which, to be fair, Truth and Minato aren't saying. They're just saying that it matters, and to some degree it does. Why does it matter, though? What is the actual reason this stage matters? Well, it matters, and let's see if here yet. Yeah, it matters because it's giving some cope to characters who otherwise don't have a home. So we can look at characters who stack typically, and this character is very good, by the way. I don't think this character is like cope. But we can look. I mean, Vegeta, and it would be Vegeta. So this stage has given a place for characters like this to have a showcase stage. It's giving this character new life. Are we going to say that Int Broly is now a good character because he technically pounds the new hardest stage in the game? Even though we dismiss this character immediately, I know it's like, well, your opinion can change, the context of the game can change, but we kind of understand that what this stage is doing is a gimmick. It's not really difficulty so much as it's the implementation of a gimmick. And when people say things like, well, this stage is so hard because you get to here, and this guy's doing 24 million, this guy's doing 24 million, these guys are doing 17 million, this guy's doing 12, this guy's doing 11, this guy's doing 5, etc, etc, etc. Like, I get it. I get that, like, there's a lot of pressure once you reach around here. The last literal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stages or phases of this fight. I get it. I do understand, you know, it's not lost on me. But once you get to around here, the fight actually starts. So you've spent 41 phases up until this point just coasting. And with no other way to alleviate this 41 phases of literal nothing, it's just a problem with actually considering this like meaningful content. Because there is actually, I've talked about this before, if you've never played other gacha, and I think the issue with other Dokkan YouTubers is they don't play other gacha a lot. So they don't have like context around like, especially around like PvE gacha, which is like when you play Monster Hunter Wilds and someone says, I put a bunch of time into the game and now, sorry about that, I put a bunch of time into the game and now, you know, I'm done with it, there's no end game, etc., etc. They don't understand the problem that a game dev is always trying to fix when it comes to this stuff, which is just how do you make a sandbox infinite for people, right? And when Dokkan YouTubers like Truth and, you know, they talk a lot about artificial difficulty and they go, well, this isn't artificial difficulty. This is kind of artificial difficulty. We're treating this with a level of severity that isn't really necessary. And the reason this has earned so much backlash is because people in the past misfired artificial difficulty because of this guy. So now we have people saying like, oh, you know, this is just a Fusion Zamasu situation anymore. Whereas I think that this was a misfire by the community, being this mad at this boss, right? And this is a overcorrection by Dokkan YouTubers because they see a benefit in this as well. It's sort of mutual, where if you can get a 3-hour stream out of something, it's very easy content. It's very easy brain off content. You can play a different game while doing all of these phases, right? And you'll still land here, you know, right around here. You basically cannot die on those earlier phases. So where exactly is the difficulty that is like meaningful, intentional, you know, conscious design? Because we're giving that to them, right? Because we're giving that to them when we say things like the fusions are designed around this stage. That means this is intentional, right? That means that every single phase here matters. Because if it doesn't matter, then this doesn't matter. But I guess we'll just see how people talk because, you know, it's interesting. It's interesting. But we got people saying it's so obvious, you know, reality is the top units this year will be designed around this event. The thing, this is like the funniest part about designed around this event, right? And, you know, Truth is like seconding this, is designed around this event doesn't mean anything. Because we now have some of the worst characters of last year, some of the worst EZAs of last year, having a resurgence despite not being designed around this event. You know what I mean? Was that intentional? Was Namek Vegeta just a long ploy to get you to Festival of Battles? Do you think that was intentional? Is that designed around this event? Or are we just going to see characters with this line of text on their super attacks, and we're just going to go, oh, okay, he's good for Festival of Battles? I think it would be balanced Vegeta doing 1 million airs per turn forever. I don't know about that. It would certainly be more fun. I mean, so why wasn't this like responded to with like more credence? You know what I mean? Like, we could say like it's so obvious the design choice here, but where is the response here? Because this is literally the actual case, which is that it's a gacha. They want to power creep their characters, but you can't power creep Vegeta and Gogeta if they can fuse on turn 5 and are invincible and without like flattening the rest of the game, right? So we do not care, Granddad. Attacking Johnny Jr. draw. I love this. Yeah, because it's got stuck in Johnny Jr. Yeah, people just being like off the events. This is the main event. Yeah, things are going to be built for it. Everything you can see. This is just wrong. It's just not, man. I get it, but they did not build Namek Goku the way he's built because of like. They did not build Namek Goku poorly because of Festival of Battles. Oh, fair point. I'm switching sides. This event sucks, actually. I'm pretty sure it's because of massively increased stats and Vegeta would be able to one-turn any boss after 3 to 4 turns with attacks. I mean, yeah. I mean, if they made the event or made the fusions the way they are, like so much of their core identity would need to change. Because yeah, you could not have this character firing only ultra attacks. I don't know. It seems very obvious, but I guess this is one of those situations where like, and it's very rare. It's very rare in a case where with like a gacha where like the overwhelming majority is saying no, and they're probably the ones that are right. It's usually the case that the Dokkan Twitter is like, no, no, and it's like, well, Dokkan Twitter is being a little unreasonable. So, yeah, it's just like, yeah, people would rather stick their heads in the sand and pretend like the event doesn't exist. It's not about it not existing. People understand it exists, but as Sydney here says, it's just no correlation. We can go to Minato, who says, I don't get this point. Every single event has no replayability outside of fun once you clear all missions. If you're going to dislike this event, it's because it's super long. Units being tested here is good for players who haven't beaten it, just like other difficult stages. This is true. Honestly, this is pretty reasonable. The only thing is that the testing ground does not really matter. Because the line of text required for a character to be good in this event is very minimal. Because we understand that the gate to get into this event, the bridge, the floor to be good in this event is not exceptional. It's just stacking and some like recency. It's not really this coalescence of intentional design that makes a character so good for specifically Festival of Battles, and they work here because everything in their kit meshes so well. They stun, they seal. It's not. None of the things can be stunned or sealed. So it's really, I mean, look at the fucking side of the thing here. Like, it's really just the case of like, do they stack, and are they recent enough that they can get to a high enough point, essentially. Then we have Rhodey, who, Rhodey is the unsung villain of Dokkan Twitter now that Alan's gone for a lot of people. But I think they're just being very reasonable here. I don't think I've seen the Dokkan tubers be as out of touch in a long time as they are right now with the Festival of Battles. People aren't upset that it has big numbers. Nobody cares that Gogeta is hitting for 27 million. They're upset because it's boring. It's 3 hours of nothing. If you are going to say that units need to be graded here to reach, to beat this, I'm just going to be honest, they kind of don't. You get 25 stones at phase 25, and the rest of this is fluff. It's such uninteresting fluff, because it's not like locking and sealing, and you have to move your units around, and you have to make sure they're here and there, and you're really just like fishing for around here until you confuse. It's just not interesting. It doesn't really allow for like team building, that fabled team building. And the characters that are going to be good here are not going to be difficult to spot. It's not a situation where it's like, oh my goodness, this character is actually sneakily good in this event. It's like, new players don't need you to test in this event. They know once they see Ray's attack and defense that they'll be fine here. It's a 50 to 60 to 73, phase or turn 3-hour fight. You don't need to hold their hand there. I think the average human being, crossing my fingers, is smart enough to understand that if they say stack, they can come here. But yeah, I guess it's just gonna be a little rant here, but we don't really need to go into it. It's great for streams, is the actual thing I want to see here, right? And this is the other thing. It's not hard though. It's a stat check fight. I genuinely think that unlike, say we go to a challenge event here, and I don't know, we'll just say like Goku, and you talk about like Jiren, or you talk about like, this Vegeta or this Jiren. Unlike these fights where there's enough like mechanics floating around, and you have these little like hills, these little plateaus of damage, so you can plot your team around decisions you make during the fight, and like the AoEs during the fight, and like floating characters off and stuff. We're just in a position where it's like, it's the hardest event in the game, truly, because we can look at Gogeta and Vegeta and these sort of hills that these like mountains of damage, and be like, well, obviously this is the hardest thing in the game, right? Obviously we get that, but it's not the hardest because like, it's not the hardest for the same reason that red zone fights are hard. It's the hardest because you need because it's trying to stat check you at the end, and like then you have to through all of this like time you spend, you have to go back in and repeat the stacking process, as if that's like meaningful difficulty. This is one of the most, I don't want to be mean, but this is an IQ check event where if you are aware of game design, or like how, if you play games and you think about why they're like a dev did something, you can kind of suss out that like the difficulty has nothing to do with any of these things. The difficulty is purely that you don't have enough time in the day to do this shit. It has no bearing on any of this. This doesn't matter. The difficulty is purely that you don't have enough time in the day to do any of this shit. And to me, you know, in my humble opinion, that is difficulty that does not matter. We all gonna make it. Like if you like this, like if you like the video, subscribe to the club. Peace.